Once upon a time in a kingdom far away, there lived a man named Eze, the Proud King of Imyoba. His palace stood on top of a green hill, surrounded by tall palm trees that danced whenever the wind blew. Eze was one of the richest kings in all the neighboring lands. Traders from faraway towns came to his palace to sell him gold, fine clothes, and horses. His compound was filled with servants, guards, and musicians who sang praises of his greatness every morning. But there was one thing that everyone in Imyoba knew about King Eze: he was very proud. He loved being praised. He loved hearing his name shouted by his people. He loved to walk through the market just to watch people bow to him. He would always say, "I am the greatest king that has ever ruled this land. No one before me, and no one after me, will ever be as great as Eze the Mighty." King Eze had 2 wives. The first wife, Lolo Eda, was calm and kind. She always spoke softly and cared deeply for everyone in the palace. The servants loved her because she treated them like family. The second wife, Lolo Ngozi, was beautiful but very proud too. She liked to wear heavy jewelry and always competed with Eda to win the king's attention. Together, the 2 wives lived in different parts of the palace, and though they did not fight openly, there was quiet jealousy between them. King Eze's wealth came from his farms, his palm oil business, and his control of the local trade routes. Every month, many people brought him gifts: yam, goats, wine, and cloth. In return, he blessed them and reminded them that without him, their lives would have been miserable. Sometimes he would boast so loudly that even his chiefs became tired of hearing him. One afternoon, as he sat on his golden stool in the palace courtyard, a group of elders came to speak with him. They bowed low and greeted, "Your Majesty, may you live long." He smiled proudly and replied, "I shall live long indeed. The gods themselves favor me." "What brings you here, my loyal elders?" The oldest elder, Paokri, cleared his throat. "My king, we bring news from the far end of the kingdom. There has been no rain for many moons. The rivers are drying up, and the farmers are crying. They beg that you send prayers to the gods." Eze laughed loudly. "Do you think rain will fall because I speak to the gods? No. Rain will fall because I command it. Do you not know who I am? I am Eze the Great. Even the clouds bow when I raise my hand." The elders looked at one another in silence. They knew it was dangerous to question the king's words, so they bowed and left quietly. But deep inside, they worried. Days passed, and the drought grew worse. The soil became hard, and cracks appeared on the ground. The people began to murmur that maybe the king's pride had angered the gods. But Eze refused to listen. He continued to hold feasts and parties, wasting water and food while his people suffered. Lolo Eda, his first wife, tried to speak sense into him one night as they sat in the courtyard. The moonlight fell softly on her face as she said, "My husband, the land is crying. The gods are not happy. Why don't you call the chief priest to make sacrifices and plead for mercy?" Eze frowned. "Eda, you talk too much. I am not a weak king who runs to the gods for help. The gods should thank me for ruling this land well. Let the people find their own water." Eda sighed sadly and walked away. She knew his pride would bring trouble one day. That same night, King Eze had a strange dream. He saw himself standing in a dry land where everything was burning. The trees were on fire, and the rivers were gone. A voice from the sky spoke, "Eze, you have forgotten who made you king. You have allowed pride to rule your heart. If you do not humble yourself, your crown will be taken from you." Eze woke up sweating. He looked around, but no one was there. He tried to dismiss the dream, but it disturbed his heart. Yet when morning came, he told no one about it. Instead, he wore his royal robe, called his drummers, and went to the village square to boast as usual. "People of Imyoba," he shouted, standing tall. "Fear not the drought. Your king is greater than any storm or dryness. I, Eze the Mighty, will bring back the rain with my power." He lifted his staff to the sky and commanded, "Let it rain." But the sky remained clear and silent. The people looked at one another in confusion. Some began to whisper that maybe the king was no longer favored by the gods. Later that day, a poor traveler arrived at the palace gate. He wore old clothes and carried a walking stick. He asked to see the king, saying he had a message from the gods. But the guards laughed at him. "Who are you to speak to the king?" one guard said. "Do you think our king talks to beggars?" The traveler smiled gently. "Tell him that the one who forgets his roots will soon be buried by the same earth that raised him." When the guards reported the message to Eze, he became angry. "How dare a filthy traveler send me such nonsense? Throw him out at once." That night, heavy thunder roared in the distance. Eze thought rain was finally coming, but instead, lightning struck one of his palm trees, setting it on fire. The flames spread fast, burning a part of the palace storehouse. Everyone ran to put out the fire. Lolo Ngozi cried as her clothes and jewelry burned. The next morning, the king's most valuable chest of gold was found missing, melted in the fire. He sat quietly for the first time in many years. His heart was heavy. For once, he did not call for musicians or food. He sat alone, thinking about the traveler's message and his dream. Lolo Ede came and knelt beside him. "My husband," she said softly, "sometimes, the gods teach through pain. Maybe this is a warning for you to change." For the first time, Eze did not argue. He nodded slowly, his pride melting like the gold he had lost. As the sun set, he called for the town crier. "Announce to my people," he said, "that there will be a gathering tomorrow. I have something to say to them." The next day, the people gathered at the square. They expected to hear more of the king's proud words. But instead, King Eze came down from his throne and knelt before them. "My people," he said, his voice trembling, "for a long time, I have been blind with pride. I forgot that a king without his people is nothing. I forgot that wealth and power mean nothing without humility. Forgive me. I will make sacrifices to the gods and beg for their mercy." The crowd was shocked. Some even cried. That night, Eze and the chief priest made sacrifices to the gods of rain. As they prayed, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Soon, the first drops of rain began to fall. The people shouted with joy. Eze lifted his face to the sky, tears mixing with the rain. From that day, he changed. He ruled with kindness and humility. People began to love him again, not because of his riches, but because he became a humble and wise king. But deep inside, he still wondered who that mysterious traveler was and how he had known the truth. Many moons passed after the great rain returned to Umeoba. The land grew green again. Rivers began to flow, farmers sang as they tilled their fields, and palm trees swayed proudly under the blue sky. The kingdom flourished once more, and everyone said it was because King Eze had changed. Indeed, Eze was no longer the same man he used to be. He had learned the bitter lesson of pride. He became more gentle and thoughtful, and he began to listen to his elders and his wives. He built wells in villages that had no water, shared food with the poor, and stopped boasting about his riches. Whenever someone praised him, he would smile humbly and say, "All glory belongs to the gods who rule the heavens." His first wife, Lolo Eda, became his closest advisor. He often told her, "If I had listened to you earlier, maybe I would not have suffered so much." Eda always smiled softly and said, "It is never too late to do what is right." But his second wife, Lolo Ngozi, was not happy with this change. She missed the feast, the loud music, and the fancy gifts. She often complained that the palace had become too quiet. "My husband," she said one morning, "you are a king. Why do you live like a common man now? You used to throw great parties and buy me fine jewels. Now you sit quietly and think all day. What happened to you?" Eze looked at her calmly. Ngozi, once I was proud and foolish. I thought wealth made me powerful, but it almost destroyed me. The gods opened my eyes. Peace is better than pride. Ngozi rolled her eyes and walked away angrily. She could not understand how humility could bring happiness. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a group of travelers entered Umeoba. They carried drums, baskets, and walking sticks. Among them was an old man with a white beard and bright eyes. He looked familiar, but no one could remember where they had seen him before. The travelers asked to see the king, saying they had come from a faraway land called Okon. When they arrived at the palace, the old man bowed and greeted, "Long live King Eze of Umeoba." Eze looked at him closely and felt a strange feeling in his heart. "Old man," he said, "have we met before?" The stranger smiled. "Maybe. The world is small, and the road of destiny is long. I have a message for you, O king." The palace went quiet. Eze's guards and chiefs leaned forward to listen. The stranger continued, "Many kings forget that their crowns are made of dust. They rise high and fall harder. But a king who learns humility is like a tree that bends during a storm, it does not break. You have learned well, Eze. The gods have seen your change, and they are pleased." Eze's eyes widened. He suddenly remembered the poor traveler from many moons ago who had warned him before the palace fire. His voice trembled as he said, You are the same man who came here during the drought, aren't you?" The old man smiled gently. "Yes, I am. That day, you refused to listen. But the gods wanted to teach you. Now, they have sent me again not to warn you, but to bless you." Everyone gasped. The stranger raised his hand, and a cool wind blew through the palace courtyard. The trees rustled softly, and the air smelled of fresh rain. The old man spoke again, "The gods say that from this day, your kingdom will not lack rain or harvest, as long as you remain humble and just." King Eze knelt before the stranger and said, "I do not deserve such mercy. But I thank the gods for their forgiveness. And I thank you, wise one, for your message." The stranger smiled again. "Remember, O king, humility is not a weakness. It is strength that hides itself in gentleness. Guard your heart always, for pride never dies, it only sleeps." Before Eze could speak again, a flash of lightning lit the sky. When he looked up, the old man was gone. Only the sound of rustling leaves remained. The people were amazed and fell to their knees, shouting, "The gods have visited Umeoba." That night, King Eze could not sleep. He sat by the window of his chamber, thinking deeply. Lolo Ede came in quietly and sat beside him. "My husband," she said softly, "you look troubled." He sighed. The stranger returned. He spoke with wisdom greater than any man I have ever met. "I now understand that being a king is not about wearing a crown, but about serving the people." Ede nodded. "And that is why the gods chose you, my husband. You have changed." The next morning, Eze called a great meeting at the village square. The drums echoed across the land, and everyone came, men, women, and children. The king stood before them and said, "My people, I once ruled with pride, and I almost lost everything. But the gods gave me a second chance. From today, no man shall go hungry in Umeoba. We will share our harvest, build schools for our children, and make peace with our neighbors." The crowd cheered and clapped. The sound of joy filled the air. Even the birds seemed to sing louder that day. Years went by, and King Eze's name spread far and wide, not for his riches, but for his wisdom and kindness. Other rulers came to seek his advice. His story became a lesson to all who heard it that pride can destroy even the mightiest, but humility can lift even the weakest. One evening, when the moon was full, King Eze sat on his veranda watching the stars. He smiled as he remembered how foolish he once was. Lolo Eda sat beside him, her hands resting gently on his. "My king," She whispered, "Are you happy now?" Eze nodded slowly. "Yes, Ada. For the first time, I truly am. I have found peace, not in gold or glory, but in gratitude." And as the cool breeze of night blew softly through the land, the proud king who once challenged the gods became the humble ruler loved by all. His story lived on for generations, told by elders to children sitting around the fire. There once was a proud king named Eze, who learned that no matter how high a man stands, he must still bow to the wind that made him. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.